he went ahead assuming that he is going to be Prime Minister for life. He genuinely believed, at least until this election, that he's invincible and always right about everything. And of course, this has been swallowed. Sharing power is going to be a bitter pill for him to swallow, that's for sure. That's what I feel as a common man. I'm not a political analyst or an observer, and so I can only speak as a common man. It's going to be hard for him to swallow, but he's going to have to do it if he wants to decide whether his mission is to serve the country or to rule. He's been talking less and less sense over the years. And to have the country in the hands of someone who believes he has been sent by God, if he's not actually God, I think should scare the daylights out of anybody. Well, since Modi seems inordinately fond of headgear, I'd like to see him wear a skull cap someday. For one thing, I would certainly like to see an end to hate speech. I would like to see an end to convicts being garlanded and felicitated. I'd like to see more women parliamentarians. Modi moderating his speech is perhaps too much to hope for. As I said, he's far too egoistic to believe that he was wrong in any way. So just wearing a skull cap would be a gesture.
Tell me, what would it mean to you if he did wear a skull cap? What message would it be sending you personally?
After his refusal to wear the skull cap at a function, when some Maulvis presented him with one, it's difficult to erase that memory. But if he does, as you said, a gesture that I'm not separate from you. You and I are citizens of the same country. I have no aversion to you. If he were to convince the Muslims of this country of that, I think that would be a great help.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Today we present the first in an occasional series of interviews with illustrious citizens of India about how they view the election results and what they think those results portend for the future. My first guest is someone who's widely considered our most talented actor of stage and screen, the well-known and highly regarded Naseeruddin Shah. Naseeruddin Shah, let me ask a simple question. Last week, when you found out that the BJP had lost its majority and ended up with its worst result in 10 years and now needs allies to form a government, what were the thoughts that went through your mind?
My first reaction was to gloat. And because I don't think I'm the only one who believed that our country is heading down the path which leads to George Orwell's dystopia of Animal Farm and 1984. In fact, if you read these two books now, you'll be astonished at how resonant they are to what's been happening in our country for the last 10 years. But then I had to remind myself that this is not a time for gloating, this is a time for introspection. For winners, losers, government, opposition, Hindus, Muslims, everybody. It's time for all of us to wonder how we can help set things right. It's very easy for those of us to oppose Modi, to blame everything that is wrong with the country on him. The fact is, there was plenty wrong with the country even before Modi came to power. Modi just managed to tap in to what was always dormant. There has always been an undercurrent of hostility among religions in our country. I can recall as a child being taunted for being a Muslim, and I remember taunting others about their religions, which I think has always been under the surface. And Modi was very clever to tap into this very hint that he got, this cue that he got, and to just dismember whatever remnants there were of secularism and of equality. We have in the past, it's very easy to say that everything was hunky dory before, that we were living in a land of milk and honey. We weren't. There were plenty of problems, and some of us were taken in by the naive statements of the Hindi film songs of Hindu, Musalman, Hindu na banega, na Musalman banega, etc. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai, sabko mera salam. This was an attempt, but I don't think the entire country was taken in by it, but some of us certainly were. And it has proved to be not the case, that these songs did not resonate. These songs were merely lip service and merely suggestions to us. It's now up to all of us to somehow help disperse this miasma of hatred which seems to have taken over the country.
I'll come to that in a moment's time. But I was struck by the very beginning of your answer. You said, my first reaction was to gloat. Did you also breathe a sigh of relief?
Oh, yes, I definitely did. Not only because the BJP's strength has been short-circuited, but also because of the way the opposition handled the vile charges that were thrown at them. Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge's dignified response to that invective, I think, was wonderful. And the biggest takeaway, I would think, is the arrival of Rahul Gandhi as a competent, hardworking, astute politician, rather than being an object of mirth for the opposition. I think that the joke that Modi made about Rahul to his sycophantic interviewers who were all in splits about it was "Kaun Rahul." I think that's the last joke that's ever going to be made about Rahul Gandhi.
Over the last 10 years, we've seen Narendra Modi as an authoritarian, some would say even an autocratic prime minister who's got used to having his way. Now that he has to run a coalition government where he has to keep his allies happy, do you think he's temperamentally and psychologically capable of running a very different sort of government?
You know, as an actor, when I watch a politician, I observe him. I don't necessarily listen to what he says, but I observe him, and I wonder that if I ever had to play one of these characters, what kind of auto-suggestion would I give myself? It's very hard. If I were asked to play Modi someday, or if I was asked to play some other character who I'm not terribly in love with, it would be kind of difficult for me. Anyway, I find most politicians rather amusing, but I can only say that I hope that his two crucial allies, because of whom he's been returned to power, can convince him to be more moderate in his statements and in his doings. It's just a hope. But his inaugural speech was definitely conciliatory, saying that the opposition is not our enemy, but not an enemy of the nation, but our opponent. After hurling all sorts of invective and accusations against the opposition, he suddenly decided to take on a more moderate tone. But I wonder if what he said can be trusted.
You're suggesting that hopes that he will moderate and restrain himself depend entirely on the extent to which his allies can influence him.
Yes, I think, because who else is going to influence him apart from these two allies? Sharing power is going to be a bitter pill for him to swallow, that's for sure. That's what I feel as a common man. I'm not a political analyst or an observer, and so I can only speak as a common man. It's going to be hard for him to swallow, but he's going to have to do it if he wants to decide whether his mission is to serve the country or to rule.
Now, over the last decade, He's ignored key institutions that matter to everyone in the country. He's often undermined Parliament. He's frequently held up appointments recommended by the Supreme Court Collegium, and he's been invariably dismissive of the media. Now that he's a weaker prime minister dependent upon allies for his survival, do you see that changing? Or might that be just too much to expect?
He's not dismissive of the entire media. He's pretty patting on the back those who sing his praises. The trouble is that he went ahead assuming that he is going to be prime minister for life. He genuinely believed, at least until this election, that he's invincible and always right about everything. And of course, this has been swallowed. His so-called charisma, that is something I want to talk about. And charisma is not a thing that is inherent in you. It's not something you're born with. Charisma is something you perceive in a person because you are curious about that person. And Modi has managed to create that charisma around himself with his fables about his childhood and about his selling tea and about his living with the Adivasis and having a personal relationship with everybody. So everybody is begging for 35 or 40 years, whichever, he's got to make up his mind about that. And all that sort of thing. Nobody asks him the question, if you begged for 35 years, you left home because you wanted to serve the country, why didn't you join the army? Why did you beg? And didn't anybody tell you that with this 56-inch chest, you're going around begging? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? He's too vain to see himself as a weak leader. So there's likely to be sparks flying. I think we're in for an interesting time.
What about Narendra Modi's famous intolerance of criticism and dissent? Do opposition politicians and journalists have less to fear of him in this third term? Or is it going to be impossible, as the saying goes, for a leopard to change his spots? And do you see his alleged misuse of the CBI and the ED diminishing? Or is that now part of a tradition that is bound to continue?
Opposition politicians may have something to fear. Some of them are still languishing in jail for no reason at all. The media has to do some soul searching. The media that has been singing his praises has to do some soul searching to realize how conscienceless they have been, and whether they change their tune or not is up to time to tell. But the CBI and the ED just may have become a little too cocky, having been given this free rein or following orders, whichever it was. So it's difficult to say what the CBI and the ED will do, but they're definitely not going to be directed to do this or to do that, or raid this one or raid that one. That's what I hope, and that's what I think.
So you expect substantial change, both in terms of tolerating criticism and dissent, and also in terms of reining in the CBI and ED.
The trouble is, Modi takes everything personally, and his army of sycophants rush to bolster his sometimes absurd arguments. So, and he's too vain, as I said before, to see himself as weak. And I definitely think that the media is going to change its tune, slightly subtly at the beginning, but they're going to have to, because the facts are going to be staring them in the face.
Now, one of the things that startled the country was Narendra Modi's claim that he's not of biological birth, but was sent by God to do God's work. I can't recall any other Indian politician speaking like this in public. When you heard these comments, how did you view them?
I wasn't totally surprised, I have to say. He was heading in that direction anyway, to set himself up not only as the invincible leader, the one who can do no wrong, then to gradually project himself as the religious leader as well, almost as a priest, almost godlike. inaugurating the Ram Mandir when it wasn't even completed. It's it's very funny. There's a lovely little story by James Thurber called "The Owl Who Was God." It's about an owl who couldn't see in the daytime but could see in the dark, and two little moles tried to slip by, and the owl said, "You." So the moles got scared as who could see them in the dark, and they turned around and they said, "Who?" So he said, "You too." So the moles were very excited and rushed back and told everybody that the owl is the wisest of all creatures. He can see in the dark and he can answer every question. So all the creatures went to him and asked him several questions, the answer to all of which was either who, or to, or you, or to it, which managed to answer all their questions. So they said, "Well, he's God. This man is God," and they decided to make him their king, and they went on this great grand procession down the road, down the highway, when it was bright sunlight and the owl couldn't see a thing. And somebody told him, "Look, there's a truck heading in this direction." And the owl said, "To it." "There's great danger," they said. "To who?" said he. And of course the truck crushed them all to death, including the owl. And the moral of the story is that you can fool too many of the people too much of the time. But on a serious note, I would say it is slightly, I feel slightly apprehensive about this statement of his, and I think every Indian should. Because he's been talking less and less sense over the years. And to have the country in the hands of someone who believes he has been sent by God, if he is not actually God, I think should scare the daylights out of anybody.
नसीरुद्दीन जी, बड़े चालाकी और खूबसूरत के साथ आप कह गए कि मोदी उल्लू है।
ये मैंने नहीं कहा, ये आपने कहा। मैंने आपको सिर्फ एक कहानी सुनाई है।
Let me put it like this. To be an owl in English is to be wise. To be an ullu in Hindi is not.
Right. That's why I called him an owl. I didn't call him an ullu.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. For over 20 years, one of the hallmarks of Narendra Modi's speeches has been his anti-Muslim rhetoric. From calling refugee camps baby-producing factories in 2002, all the way to calling the entire Muslim population of India infiltrators in 2024, this has been there in his speeches all the time. Now that he's dependent on allies like the TDP and the JDU, who have a very different attitude to Muslims, do you see his rhetoric stopping or at least reducing? Or is that unlikely because this sort of anti-Muslim comment has become second nature to him?
He's not the first to try it. It's just that he appeared at an opportune moment. The Hindu Mahasabha was formed in 1915 in response to the Muslim League. There were also two Bengali gentlemen in the early part of the 20th century whose names I cannot recall at the moment, who started the first ones to talk about the two-nation theory. The fact that Hindus and Muslims are not compatible, they cannot live together. This was, of course, disproved by the independence struggle in which the Hindus and Muslims both participated, and probably that was the last time that there was combined unity, complete unity between the two religions. But the writings of people like M.S. Golwalkar and others obviously added fuel to the fire and encouraged Modi to do this. And he struck while the iron was hot. The really sad part of it is that friendships have ended, families have had discord among them because of this, and it's so absurd to point fingers at a community without any tangible proof, without anything to back you up, just to make a statement like all rioters can be recognized by their clothes and other such absurd statements. So he is following a tradition which has been set before him by various other Hindutva leaders, many of whom believed that Hindus and Muslims cannot live together in the same society. Yogi Adityanath says these things even today. The fact that we survived together for hundreds of years under the tyrannical Mughal rule escapes the notice of everybody. So Modi just used a very clever tactic, which happened to strike a chord among those who really believe that there is nothing in common between the two religions. I mean, if there has to be enmity between religions, it should be between the Sikhs and the Muslims because of what happened during partition. But there's none. It's between the Hindus and the Muslims. The Hindus have always been pacifist. The Muslims have always been slightly more aggressive. But the fact is that the horrors that were perpetrated in Punjab was between the Sikhs and the Muslims. But the Sikhs have proved to be the most noble and the most dignified people in this country. They are the ones who opened their Gurudwara for the Muslims to do their namaz when they were forbidden to do the namaz in the Eidgah. So, in some ways, Modi has been extremely clever. I wouldn't say intelligent, clever. And as a tactician, as a politician, non-pareil, I think.
Now, the truth is, Narendra Modi and the BJP made Indian Muslims feel insecure and even unwanted in their own country. Have the election results, the fact that Modi lost his majority, the fact that the BJP has fallen to its worst result in a decade, have those results provided a measure of reassurance, or is it too early to say?
I have never felt discriminated against. I have never felt isolated. I've never felt that my life has been affected in any way, except for the emotional aspect of it. My father was in the government service. My brother served in the army. The other brother studied at the IIT and worked as an executive in a sales company all his life. I have never had a setback to my career because of the fact that I'm a Muslim. I don't think being Muslim is my only identity. I don't think of myself as a Muslim. I think of myself as a Muslim who lives in India. And there are times when I can't recognize this country. Others have said this before me. The country I was born and brought up in, the country in which 6 generations of my family are buried, the country which I was taught to revere and to love, there were times when I could not recognize it. So, but the fact is that the Muslims are not blameless either. The Muslims have concentrated on all the wrong things instead of worrying about education. They're worrying about hijab and they're worried about this length of Sania Mirza's skirt and all these sort of things, when they should be worried about education, when they should be worried about enlightening their race, about exposing them to modern ideas instead of thrusting them into madrasas all the time and giving them only religious initiation. The Muslims have been at fault. It is high time that the Muslims in this country woke up to the fact that if their representation in the government, there's not a single Muslim, of course, in the cabinet or anywhere in the ministry, which is not surprising. But if their percentage in the armed forces, in the police, in whatever profession is unaccepted, it's because they are perhaps incapable. What they should worry about is to make themselves so capable that they cannot be rejected. I don't think nursing this feeling of victimization, which has been encouraged by the BJP, is going to help us in any way. We have to just ignore all that and concentrate on the job that we have to do. And that is to educate our youth, to enlighten our youth, and to make them feel that they are part of the nation. And perhaps this change of government, if one can call it that, might help to do that.
I hear what you're saying, and it's a very valid point you're making. But let me put what I suppose is an opposite viewpoint to you. One of the most regrettable consequences of 10 years of Narendra Modi and the BJP is that India has increasingly become a majoritarian society where Muslims are increasingly treated like second-class citizens. In many cases, even the way ordinary people think of Muslims has started to change. Will the election result reverse the sort of country we are in danger of becoming, or at least put a brake on anti-Muslim developments? Or do you think this is a process once started, it's very difficult to halt and turn around?
It'll be very difficult to disperse the miasma of hate that has permeated the country. And I think it will disperse. I mean, how long can you nurse hatreds? Hatreds are destructive to you yourself. Hatreds are very fatiguing to continue with. And the change, if it is to happen, will happen slowly. It will not happen overnight. So, as I said, it is too early to start celebrating. We should put our heads down and start doing our jobs. Now, if we don't do whatever we are capable of, whether it is sweeping the streets or whether it is acting in a movie or whether it is driving a truck, whatever it is, we do it that to the best of our ability. I think that's the only responsibility that rests with the people. The rest of it rests with the government.
You know, in one of your earlier answers, you correctly pointed out that there isn't a single Muslim member of the government. The papers point out this is the very first time in Indian history that a government has been sworn in without a single Muslim representative. But the truth is, the NDA as a whole does not have a single Muslim Lok Sabha MP. In fact, as the papers have pointed out, the NDA also did not have a Christian MP or a Sikh MP. But Mr. Modi has gone out of his way to appoint a Sikh minister and to appoint one Christian minister. But he has not appointed a Muslim minister.
Yes.
What message does that send out to 14% of our fellow citizens, the 200 million strong Muslim community? What message does it send out to them when they look at their government and say, there's not one of us, not one member of our faith there that we can see?
It's depressing. It's not surprising, because the hatred for Muslims, which the BJP seems to nurse, it seems to be visceral. It's beyond their control. I don't think they can do anything about it. This hatred is very real. And all the Muslims can do is not answer the hatred with hatred. It's what, as Rahul Gandhi said, nafrat ki bazaar mein, mohabbat ki dukaan. So let us try that. Let us not be so prickly and so easy, so quick to take offense. Let us look behind the statements of what our Prime Minister makes and what the other ministers make. The Muslims have a collective responsibility, is what I would say, and that responsibility, most of all, includes education. As I said, unless we are capable, Modi has not included any Muslims anywhere on the horizon, because he doesn't think they are capable. He even mocked Hamid Ansari when Hamid Ansari was retiring, and said, "Okay, now you can revert to your original, whatever it is, your core beliefs." When Hamid Ansari said there is an element of apprehension among the Muslims in the country, so it's something we just have to do together. It's not something that the Hindus alone can do or what the Muslims alone can do. It's something that we have to do together.
We're coming to the end of this interview, but there are two questions I want to put to you. As you know, a new government is also a new beginning. Are there things as an Indian citizen that you would like to see that would signal a new chapter has opened. It could be a speech, it could be a new policy, it could be a truly meaningful act or gesture, something that suggests we've turned the corner and the past is behind us.
Well, since Modi seems inordinately fond of headgear, I'd like to see him wear a skull cap someday, for one thing. Of course, I'd like to see more worthy Muslims. The fact is, the Muslims don't have a person who they can accept as a leader. That leader doesn't have to be a Muslim, but he's got to be somebody who talks sense to the Muslims. He's got to be somebody who the Muslims accept without question, without reservation. I would certainly like to see an end to hate speech. I would like to see an end to convicts being garlanded and felicitated. I'd like to see more women parliamentarians. He has made this 30% reservation and so on, but it's not been brought into force at the moment. But these are the things I'd certainly like to see. Modi moderating his speech is perhaps too much to hope for. As I said, he's far too egoistic to believe that he was wrong in any way. So just wearing a skull cap would be a gesture.
Tell me, what would it mean to you if he did wear a skull cap? What message would it be sending you personally?
After his refusal to wear the skull cap at a function, when some Maulvis presented him with one, it's difficult to erase that memory. But if he does, as you said, a gesture that I'm not separate from you. You and I are citizens of the same country. I have no aversion to you. If he were to convince the Muslims of this country of that, I think that would be a great help. And if Muslims were not victimized the way they are after any riot, whether they are responsible or not, but the fact is that they are. Any violence that occurs near or in a Muslim community gets blamed on the Muslims entirely. I would like that to stop. And his wearing a skull cap might indicate an acceptance, a grudging acceptance, if you will, of the fact that Muslims are a part of this country, an indispensable part of this country.
Let me, Naseeruddin Shah, end this interview by attempting a parallel between actors like yourself on the one hand and the situation Narendra Modi finds himself in today. Actors make a career becoming someone else and convincing the audience that they've transformed into that other person, whether on stage or whether on screen. Similarly, Narendra Modi now has to convince India he can think, act, and behave differently to the way he behaved for the last 23 years, first as Chief Minister of Gujarat and then 10 years as Prime Minister of India. In other words, old Mr. Modi has to become new Mr. Modi. Can he do it?
Well, firstly, I don't think he's that good an actor. Neither his measured smile nor his crocodile tears have convinced me at any moment. So I don't think he can put on a garb. He has to. I hope that the 48 hours of meditation at Kanyakumari have enlightened him in some way. He did say he came out feeling a divine energy and so on, but I hope it has made him think about himself and of what the pass he has brought the country to. So unless he genuinely changes his point of view, which is hard to believe that he ever will, I don't think he'll be able to convince the country that he genuinely believes all are equal. I don't think he can put on a convincing act of having become the new Modi. He has a choice, as I said before, between wanting to serve the country or wanting to rule the country, and I suspect his desire is to rule.
Naseeruddin Shah, thank you very much for the time you've given me, for sharing your thoughts and your perception of the point India has reached with these election results. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye. See you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.